Hi, and welcome to another episode of Nursing Your Way to Wealth, where a mental health nurse and an accountant talk about wealth creation, personal development, and financial independence in the UK to help you live the life you deserve. Today we have episode 19, and Alex and I thought it would be quite useful to discuss some key terms that are bandied about in the FIRE community. Those are frugality and deprivation. So we're going to talk about them both. We're going to look at it of a lens of frugality versus deprivation. We'll try and bring some examples of each and just give our own thoughts on the terms, really, because when we read about it, we talk to other people about it. We hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't want to be deprived, so I'm not going to do that. Don't talk to me about investing or saving half my income or anything like that, because it just sounds like I'll be deprived, and I just don't want it." So we're going to dig a bit about it, and we'll see what comes out.
Yeah, hi everyone. And I think it's a really interesting topic because I recently did a presentation to my wider team at work, which is kind of how we came about with the episode really. And I was mentioning about, investing aggressively and, trying to save as much as you can. And a lot of the comments were around, so yeah, sounds all well and good, but it just sounds like you're depriving yourself and you're not living a life. And I think it's such a misconception because for me, yes, you have to make choices and compromises if you're serious about saving aggressively and investing aggressively. But that for me does not equal deprivation. And I think there's often a shift needed in people's mindset of you're assuming that if you want to have a high savings rate, that you then have to give up everything and no longer enjoy life and almost just live in a kind of off-grid eating watered down beans for the rest of your life until you've got some money invested to kind of to live off. And it really isn't the case. And I'm hoping that over the course of the next kind of 20 minutes, we can hopefully dispel that. And yeah, it'd be great as well. Any listeners, if you have any feedback or comments on this, please get in touch because it'd be great to listen and to hear your views on it.
Definitely, and I think it's worth starting with some definitions. One of them I've looked up, and one of them I haven't. So I think, yeah. So the definitions that I've looked up. So deprivation, I think, is something that a lot of people in perhaps our generation, Alex generation, X, millennials, that kind of era, and perhaps certainly Gen Zs as well now. So deprivation for me is really going without basic human needs, being either seriously like uncomfortable or perhaps like painful experiences. So a quick Google tells me that being deprived means lacking important things like food and water. For example, warm clothing, housing, nutrition are in short supply. People are deprived of the basics of life. And I feel like that's something that's been taken to a huge extreme. When people think, and I've heard examples of people of not having, um, say, I don't know, fancy clothes, designer outfits, or car badges with four circles on, something like that, then that's being deprived of something that they want, opposed to something that they need in life. I'm very much think about the needs versus wants, and I'm quite. I'd like to think I'm quite good at it. I'm probably not all the time brilliant, but I like to think of purchases that I make. Do I need something, or do I simply want something? So it takes me a little bit of time to make choices around this. I often get a bit paralyzed in decision paralysis, the old jam theory going on, and frugality to me, that's a hard word to say, frugality or being frugal. For me, it's just getting good value out of something and being intentional with the spending that you do, with the stuff that you do buy or use as a service, making sure it's valuable to you for the need you have. I mean, that'll be different to everyone. I mean, Alex, you'll have different values on spending to me. and other people listening, you'll have different values to both of us combined, and perhaps anyone else too, because our values, I think, are shaped via or by our upbringing, by the lessons we've learned, certainly about money, and it can shape the decisions we make. So somebody might feel deprived, and someone else might think it's luxurious. Someone might think it's a frugal approach. It's each to their own, and everybody's correct in their own mind. But what we wanted to do was give a broad overview about both of those.
Yeah, it's yeah, really, really interesting points. And I think to kind of hammer home some of the to kind of prove that you don't have to go without on your journey to financial independence. I mean, a really good exercise, and this is where your values actually will come out. But if you were to just note down on a spreadsheet or a piece of paper what you're spending, where you spend your money. So my house costs X amount, my eating out is X, my grocery bill is Y, my transport is Y, my going to the cinema on a weekend is X, whatever. List all those down, and then you can you'll be quite surprised actually how much you probably spend on those. And then in the column next to it, you could come up with an alternative. So you can go from very, let's say, not extreme. So by that, such as I spend £30 last week on my coffees at work. I'm going to take, rather than buying a coffee in the morning, I'm going to take one with me, and that will save me £5 as an example, all the way up to actually, why do I rent or buy or own this house, which is costing me thousands and thousands of pounds every month, when actually you could have something for much less. And so you can still benefit and have a great life and enjoy it for what it is. Even things like holidays, you can still go on holiday when you're pursuing financial independence. Some people might, be fortunate enough to be, can fly around the world and still be able to do it. And others, it might be actually, I'm going to go abroad every other year, and that's my sacrifice. But the year that I'm not going abroad, I will stay at home and I'll go have a staycation. Or I could, rather than trying to pay to go out to see friends, you go to the park or go to a free museum. There are plenty of things around where you can still get the benefits of, a really fulfilling life, but you don't have to actually be spending money. So that for me is that the importance of frugality versus deprivation. It's not suddenly as soon as you want to pursue financial independence and have a really aggressive savings rate that you have to give up on everything. It really is not that. It's about being more mindful, and hopefully there's some of those practical tips of just going down your spending and come up. And it could be a fun game of how can you get the same for less. And I know I play that with myself sometimes. But yeah, I think there's quite a lot in that, and through it you'll also then I think figure out where your values are, because you could be willing to compromise on one thing but not on another, which is completely fine. But it's trying to maybe cut back on those things that don't add as much value to you and be frugal there. But by no means is this you have to go and live in the mountains and never see anybody again kind of cult. It's definitely not like that. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Alex.
I think if it was a cult like you just described of living in the mountains, whittle your own spoons, forage all your food, I would be out the door pretty sharpish. So, one of the interesting things that I think comes out of it is it means intentional spending or intentional saving, intentional investing, whatever you term it. It means different things to different people. So, what's frugal to me might not be frugal to someone else. And it might be totally, it might just make no sense to another person because of how they live and the pressures they're under, etc. I mean, a good example of something that I would consider to be perhaps a frugal approach rather than a deprived approach is we often have friends of ours come and stay with us for the weekend, and they normally stay Friday night, Saturday night, go home Sunday, and we just do a bunch of fun things, which obviously involves quite a lot of food and coffee for me and anyone else if they want one. And what we normally do is we'll make dinner together on one of the evenings, and we'll go out to eat somewhere on the other evening, whether that's Friday, Saturday, or swap, whatever. And that's just a good way of a bringing the cost down, but still enjoying things that we do. So if anyone's listened to before, they know that I love coffee and pizza. A big place in my heart for Italian food. So I often make pizza dough. We make pizza with our friends here, and we did that. And most recently, was it February? I think two of our pals came here. People I've known a long time. Shout to Will and Emily if you're listening to this. Hi. Yeah, so we made pizza on Friday, and then we always go out to an Italian on the Saturday as well. And I usually end up having two pizzas in 2 days. And what I do is I think about whether the pizza I make at home is as good as the restaurant pizza. It's not. I'm not quite there yet, but it's just an interesting exercise that I find to do. I mean, there's you could make an awful lot of pizza for what you pay for pizzas in wherever you're going, but the experience is totally different. So I value the difference in experience, the not washing up, the not having to bother cooking, the speed in which it happens, the atmosphere, environment, and all of those things cost a bit of money. It's not the most expensive pizza place in the city. It's, in my opinion, the best, which is why we go. But again, I think it's just getting value out of something, and we probably just a wider thought now. My wife and I probably go out for dinner, I want to say 6 times a year, something like that, once every 2 months, because we're both vegetarian. Often, whenever you go out, you get pasta of some sort, and it's my wife's Italian heritage, and she's incredible at making things like that. She'll often make pasta by hand and sauces and stuff, and it's really, really good. So it would have to be like a top tier restaurant to better it, in my opinion. And sometimes we look at it and we think, actually, is it going to be good enough for us to spend all of that extra money on it, or are we happy to eat at home? And most of the time, we eat at home, and I don't feel deprived by that in the slightest.
Yeah, that's a really nice concept that you have actually of eating out one night and eating in another. And I must say we're very similar in the eating at home. We like to do that, and that's one of the things where on the frugality versus deprivation point, we so me and my fiance, we have our friends around quite often for dinner or for lunch or brunch even, and it's not in a way of avoiding going out and spending money. It's more we much prefer being at home. I enjoy cooking, and we both enjoy hosting people, and it's a really nice way of um, you're giving your time to your friends. You know, it's your time to um, cook your meals and prepare the food and think about the menu, and that I feel is a really nice almost gift to friends to do that. And you know, we'll often do it where we'll do the starters and mains, and we'll get our friends will bring a bottle of wine as a dessert or something. And we have a similar thing where we find it very difficult now to actually eat out anywhere because, and it's not because we're tight or stingy. It's just, am I really getting my value for money? And actually, I can make a lot. I can do better at home. And and I think when probably similar to you in that we eat out maybe a couple of times, yeah, once every couple of months or probably once every 6 weeks, and it's a lovely treat. And I think that's the one thing, it becomes a treat. Whereas I think if you look at a lot of my wider friend circle, it's not uncommon for them to be eating out or certainly ordering in 3 to 4 times a week, week after week. And I think as long as you do that, it just becomes part of well, this is what we do. And it loses a lot of the sparkle. And that's a real shame because I used to, when I was younger, used to really look forward to going out for a meal because it was special. And I think I've got that back, which is really nice. And another thing we do is we quite like to we watch quite a lot of sport, me and my partner, and we'll buy some kind of cheap beers from the supermarket and some pub snacks, and then just have them at home and we have we've got like a nice TV and a bit of a snug area, and so rather than going out to the pub to watch the football, we'll have it at home and have a few beers and some pub snacks whilst we're at it. So and that's one of our favorite things. So again, really, really great time. We love doing it. Don't remotely feel deprived of not going to the pub. And I think for anybody that's listening and thinking, oh, I don't know, I just really like going and to the pub and I like going out to eat, I would just say give it a try. Worst thing that can happen is you try it, it doesn't work, you don't like it, you don't see the point, and then you revert back to what you did before. But I think it's all in the spirit of experimentation. Yeah. Do you have any other examples, Alex, of where you're kind of have cut back and actually you feel like you're not really losing out on things?
I've been thinking, yeah, whilst you've been talking, and first thing you mentioned about people going out to eat like multiple times a week or ordering in or something. Partly that's been made as easy as possible to remove as much friction as you can from that process in order to take, well, I think, more money through marketing and sales off of people and into pockets of companies. And it becomes, if you think about how humans get used to things and the hedonic treadmill, that becomes normal to you. So when people say it's like, I don't know, Taco Tuesday or Fish and Chip Friday or whatever, that becomes part of your pattern. And your brain will always want to go into that rest and digest, nothing's difficult, let's save energy for when we absolutely need it. So it makes, and then combine that with a ping on your phone from, I don't know, one of the food ordering places that says, oh, we've not seen you in 8 days. Are you still alive? Here's a 10% off code or whatever. And you're much, much more likely to make those choices, especially if you're stressed, you're tired, you've got a lot going on. And I appreciate people do have all of those things, but try and be aware of your senses and your feelings around that and try not to be led into things. In terms of what we're suggesting here is we're not saying don't do any of the fun stuff. We're saying do all the fun stuff that you want to do, but make intentional decisions about it. And if you're unsure, I'm a huge advocate of splitting the difference between things. So if you normally eat, say you eat out, I don't know, 10 times a month or 6 times a month or something, split it in half and eat out 5 times or 3 times and put the rest of that money into your index tracker and leave it to invest over time. And find the money somewhere, because it's probably going somewhere that's a bit bloaty and a little bit unintentional in terms of spending, or it's automatic or something. And you do have that money. Probably you have that money there to invest. Certainly, if you're looking at finance podcasts and you found us through searching for financial independence or investing, wealth building, something like that, and really think about whether it's depriving you or whether you just want to live that type of life. And what we suggest here is you live the life that you want to live, and you're able to live it for a really long time. Your health span is good, your lifespan is long, and you can use the money that you've invested to live the life you want to live for as long as possible. And you're not chained to a desk, or you're chained to working all the time, or reliant on an employer, because you have this plan and you have this extra money that you've learned about, you've worked through it, same way Alex and I are doing. We're not done by any means. I mean, I only speak for myself, but I'm not anywhere near done. I'm 100% still on the journey. I need to work out how far I'm along, actually. I'm definitely less than 10 or 15% of the way there, for sure, for sure. And I think it's taking a step back and looking at certainly your expenditure in your life and actually thinking whether it's good value, whatever you're doing is good value, or whether it's deprivation. I would never want anyone to feel deprived of any of the things that we've discussed. I mean, if you don't have warm clothing, housing, and nutrition, absolutely spend your money on those. Lean on people if you have to, especially something like citizens advice, family, friends, churches, etc., to get those kind of things. But if you're not and you're comfortable and you're employed, which is what this podcast is aimed at doing, is improving finances of people who are kind of on the path like us towards retirement, and it's just making good choices with it. Alex, does that answer your question, or have I gone off on a massive tangent again?
No, that answers my question. I think you've raised some good points as well, and I think there is that wider, sometimes a wider perspective needed from people when they. I think we live in, and I speak for living in the UK, a very developed country where most of the population are not deprived, and if you zoom out and look at some of the developing countries around the world where it truly is deprivation. I mean, I've been in, I've been lucky enough to go to India last year, and where you're seeing people with their children begging on the streets with literally like no food at all, no home. It's horrendous, and that for me that is deprivation. Somebody that can't get the latest iPhone or is feels deprived because they have to take their own lunch into work to save some money. Like, get real. It's not deprivation. It's careful with your money, definitely, but it is not deprivation by any means. And I think sometimes people need to take a real step back and get some perspective, and that I think then helps put things into yeah, put things into perspective and make better decisions. Because there's no reason why anybody, certainly in the UK, can't become become financially independent, in my opinion. Yeah, so when you look at getting perspective and you know thinking about everybody's um in such different situations, especially, and if you start comparing yourself to people that are genuinely deprived and really need every penny that they can get, it starts to put into perspective your own um, issues when it comes to frugality or deprivation. And there's a lot of this first world problems, where people are complaining that they can't have the latest iPhone or they don't have the latest jacket or pair of limited edition Nike trainers. It's for me, and I think if we're in a that perspective and that education for me has really come from traveling and opening my eyes to different parts of the world. And in my own kind of personal journey to financial independence, traveling is something that I really is really central and important to that. I don't kind of fly around first class and stay in five-star hotels all the time, if ever, but seeing different places really opens your eyes to that saying travel broadens the mind. It really does, and it really helps to put things in perspective. And your then own journey, when you look at how some other people live in other parts of the world, is you know you can't be living in a developed country and feeling that you're deprived. You really can't. And yeah, for me, that's one thing that's really important is that constant learning and education and being curious about other cultures and other parts of the world, because it helps frame your own journey and helps you make the right decision and steer the course with it. Alex, I don't know if you've had similar experience through traveling and yeah, your views on that.
This is going to sound mega privileged on my part, but my grandmother used to run a small charity in Nepal, and she basically funded it herself with her retirement, like any spare retirement money she had, and did some other fundraising. And she took me and my cousin out to see some of the work that she's and the other trustees of the charity. I think there's four trustees total. It's not a massive thing at all. There's no website or anything like that. She took me and my cousin with her when we were 19. And I was very much must take my headphones, must take my iPod. That dates it a little bit. It was 2007. Must take all of these things, and actually, when you've been there a few days, you don't need any of that. You see that people are happy with what I think a lot of people in the West would call a very basic life. But when we think back to deprivation, if they've got clothing, some shelter, housing, nutrition. They're not deprived of those life basics, and they'll often work together to help each other get those things. And it's not often, in my opinion, in the West that people truly help others. And it's part of our desire to try and help other people by putting some of our thoughts down. And I wonder whether if we all lived a more simple, less rat racy, less chasing shiny object and the next thing kind of life, whether we too would find our happiness in just everyday things. Because people say when they get old and grey and wise that they wish they'd lived their life differently and not worked extra days, and they'd been true to themselves, and they'd told people how they felt about things. They'd loved more, they'd played more, they'd just done life slightly differently when they're not under the pressure of certainly an everyday Western life. So that's something that I've tried to do. Try being the key word, not perfectly at all, but I try and focus on the simpler bits and just being happy, sometimes trying to be happy with where I'm at. It's sort of a mindfulness meditative type approach. I fail at it regularly. Like, for example, the other day, our dishwasher here, and you know how much I love my dishwasher, leaked everywhere, ruined a bit of our flooring. And now I've had to wash up for 3 days. And initially I was like, well, this is terrible. When actually you zoom out, I'm standing in a warm house. I have a pretty secure job. I've just eaten a huge dinner, to be fair, as well. And I wasn't any of those things that I would call deprived. Yeah, I was just having to spend 10 or 15 minutes cleaning up, tidying up. And I definitely take having a dishwasher for granted, and 100% I will replace it. But it's a perfect analogy of refocusing on what's actually around you rather than focusing on what's next and what's coming and the anticipatory response that our brains love. We don't always enjoy not chasing stuff. Goals give humans energy to achieve and do, and sometimes finding happiness in the everyday can bring a bit of balance to that. Alex, is there anything else you want to mention in terms of deprivation versus frugality? I guess we'll talk maybe about whether I went frugal for the dishwasher purchase or not. I was looking at just quickly Googling the other day, and I got up to £1,800 worth of dishwasher, and I was like, hold up, I definitely don't need that. That's not the frugal approach whatsoever. Any other thoughts or no?
I mean, that's a lot of fairy liquid for £1,800. But no, that's a really nice sentiment. And I think there's a lot in that of being simple and enjoying the simple things and being mindful and being happy. Because ultimately that's the goal, right? Is to live a happy life, and less time chasing things seems definitely to be the way to do that. But no, I think that was a lovely way to wrap up the episode.
Yeah, less time chasing, more time enjoying and doing the stuff that you love with the people you like. Really, whenever you choose. And that's if that doesn't describe financial independence, I'm not really sure what else does. Okay, this has been episode 19. Next week, a bit of a milestone really for us, episode 20. These are flying by. So if you are enjoying it or not, email us. It's nursingyourwaytowealth@gmail.com. Alex and I both get those emails, and we'll respond. One of us, perhaps both of us, will respond to everyone we get. And we've had some ideas about new stuff for the future. So stay tuned for those. See you next time. None of what we discuss on the show is to be considered financial or health advice, and we recommend you always do your own research or consult an independent financial advisor or a doctor when making your financial or health decisions.